Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Prophets Isaiah chapter 3 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and finding out that all the essential resources you rely on to just, survive are suddenly gone. No warning at all, no backup plan in place. And we're not just talking about food and water here. Imagine if the competent leaders, the judges, the security forces, the people you trust to keep things running have all just vanished as well. It's a genuinely terrifying reality to even think about, right? Well, that is exactly the chilling scenario we're going to explore today as we dive into the ancient words of the prophet Isaiah.
So, to set our context before we jump in, we are looking directly at the literal text today. In Jewish tradition, this plain meaning is known as the Peshat. We're looking straight at the original Hebrew Tanakh. We're not searching for any deep mystical codes or hidden Kabbalah symbols here. Nope, we're looking at the raw, undeniable reality of Jerusalem and Judah as they face the systematic, deliberate removal of their entire societal structure by God. Let's look really closely at exactly how this profound collapse unfolds, verse by verse.
Okay, let's walk through this slowly, starting right at verse 1. The text reads, "For, behold, the Lord of hosts, doth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah stay and staff." Now, notice the deliberate phrasing here. This isn't just some random bad luck. It's not a natural disaster or a coincidence. This phrasing highlights a direct, divine action. The Creator, referred to here as the Lord of hosts, is intentionally pulling the rug out from under the nation. He is actively removing the core elements that hold their civilization together. And the verse immediately gets specific about what this removal actually looks like. First, it says, "every say of bread and every say of water." Think about that. It doesn't start with the collapse of some sprawling government bureaucracy. It literally starts right at the dinner table. The absolute bare minimum physical needs for human survival, the daily sustenance the society completely depends on, that's the very first thing to be taken away.
Just to make sure we grasp the plain, modern meaning here, the phrase stay and staff refers to the foundational supports of a society. Think of a weary, heavy-laden traveler leaning heavily on a thick, sturdy walking stick to stay upright. If you kick that stick away, what happens? The traveler falls instantly. In the context of this prophecy, it means both physical resources, like the bread and water we just talked about, and the structural pillars, like reliable human leadership, which the prophet actually begins to list out next.
So, with the food and water gone, the next pillar to fall is human security. Moving right into verse 2, the text lists the essential figures being systematically removed. The mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet, and the diviner and the elder. Can you imagine the compounded panic of a society that is simultaneously losing its military defenders, who protect the borders, the legal authorities who maintain justice in the courts, and the spiritual guides who provide moral direction? Literally, the entire safety net is just gone.
And the unraveling absolutely doesn't stop at the top brass. Verse 3 digs even deeper into the fabric of society. The captain of 50 and the man of rank and the counselor and the cunning charmer and the skillful enchanter. This represents the complete and total extraction of the societal hierarchy. We're talking about everyone from the middle management military captains commanding small local troops, to respected civic advisors, all the way down to prominent cultural figures. Everyone who commands respect and holds the framework of a community together is just stripped away.
Now, to be absolutely clear on these somewhat archaic Hebrew terms, cunning charmer and skillful enchanter might sound a bit mystical or magical to our modern ears, but in the literal plain context of this ancient society, these were just specific individuals who held deep public influence. You can think of them as the local counselors, the charismatic speakers, or the trusted voices of reason in the marketplace who people went to for guidance and solutions. The main point Isaiah is driving home is that every single type of recognized authoritative public voice is vanishing. So the absolutely crucial question is, what happens next? Well, the direct consequence of verses 2 and 3 is what we can call a great power vacuum, when all the experienced adults, the protectors, the wise men, and the civic leaders literally leave the room. A massive, incredibly dangerous void is left behind in the halls of power. And as history continually proves over and over again, chaos is always waiting right outside the door to fill that void.
Because a vacuum never stays empty for long, does it? In verse 4, we see the truly terrifying outcome of this societal brain drain. "And I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them." Totally unqualified, completely inexperienced youth, referred to here as children and babes, step right in to fill the leadership void left by the departed elders and wise leaders.
Consider the stark contrast here for a second.
because it brilliantly illustrates the devolution of the society. On one side, you had wise judges, prophets, and experienced elders, men who spent literal decades earning their standing in wisdom. On the other side, inexperienced children and babes, a term used to emphasize sheer naive immaturity. You simply cannot replace decades of structural integrity and hard-earned life experience with absolute inexperience without paying a horrific price.
Which leads us directly to the tragic breakdown of order at the very beginning of verse 5. And the people shall oppress one another. Listen, this isn't just an ancient problem. This is the universal psychology of scarcity. When the structural pillars fall, when there's no food, and when the leaders at the top are immature and lack wisdom, society turns violently inward.
At this point, the devolution of society is complete. Mutual oppression is just the natural logical result when a civilization lacks its basic physical resources and its experienced moral leadership. I mean, without justice and without bread, it becomes a chaotic free-for-all where citizens literally prey on one another. Neighbors turn on neighbors, the young disrespect the old, and the foundational respect that keeps a city functioning evaporates completely.
Let's summarize this terrifying formula of prophecy into 3 really simple steps. Step 1. God removes the physical resources and the righteous leaders, the stay and the staff. Step 2. Inexperienced, immature rulers, the babes, blindly take power in the resulting vacuum. Step 3. Mutual oppression, infighting, and total societal collapse. It is a precise, unrelenting sequence for disaster.
Synthesizing all of this down to the plain literal meaning, the Peshat, the key idea is absolutely unmistakable. A civilization inevitably collapses into total chaos when God removes righteous leadership and foundational physical needs. It really shows us just how incredibly fragile human society actually is. The moment the pillars are kicked out, the whole heavy structure just comes crashing down.
So you might be asking, how does a 2,500-year-old prophecy about Jerusalem matter to you and me right now? Well, let's look at 3 practical life lessons we can take away from this and apply to our own self-reflection today. We need to value wise counsel, recognize the danger of oppression, and truly acknowledge the actual source of our everyday stability.
First up, we must seek true wisdom. We need to actively value experienced, righteous advice. You know, in our modern culture, it's so incredibly easy to just follow the loudest, most immature voices, like chasing viral social media influencers instead of seeking out proven mentors. We have to actively seek out the modern equivalents of the elder and the judge, valuing deep, tested wisdom over flashy inexperience.
Second, we absolutely must resist the urge to oppress. When the economy dips or when resources feel tight and stress is running high, it's basically human nature to close our fists and turn on our neighbors, which is exactly what verse 5 warned about. We have to actively fight that base survival instinct. We must consciously choose to treat each other with fairness, patience, and justice, especially when times get incredibly tough. Finally, recognize the foundation. Basic stability, just having food on the table, clean running water, a functioning justice system, is a profound and frankly fragile blessing. It is the stay and staff. It requires our continuous moral upkeep and a deep, humble recognition that these blessings are ultimately sustained by a higher power. And yeah, they can be removed if we lose our way.
Okay, so we've carefully dissected the opening mechanism of the collapse in verses 1 through 5, but the entirety of Isaiah chapter 3 continues this exact tragic unraveling. If we look back at the original text, the rest of the chapter details exactly how bad it gets. For instance, in verses 6 through 8, the desperation becomes so severe that people literally grab anyone who happens to own a decent coat, begging them to be their ruler. But the men refuse because they know the ruined city is entirely beyond saving at that point.
To recap the loss that kicks off this whole tragedy, it's the systematic, deliberate removal of the stay and staff. The bread, the water, the judge, the soldier, and the elder are pulled away. And as the chapter progresses into verses 13 through 15, we actually learn why. God brings judgment against the remaining corrupt elders and princes because they themselves had eaten up the vineyard and crushed the faces of the poor. So the loss of leadership was a direct response to their own corruption. Then comes the vacuum. We saw the incredible danger present when entirely unqualified, immature figures step up to assume power in the absence of true leadership. A society without a moral compass goes utterly adrift. The poor suffer incredibly, the weak are exploited, and the entire structure of mutual human respect just disintegrates into a culture of pure selfishness and vanity. And lastly, the result. This reinforces the tragic, inevitable outcome where a society simply devours itself. By the end of this chapter, in verses 16 through 26, Isaiah describes how the wealthy, arrogant citizens, specifically the haughty daughters of Zion who strutted in luxury, are entirely stripped of their finery and reduced to absolute destitution. The final verse of the chapter leaves us with this haunting image. Her gates shall lament and mourn, and the city, being completely desolate, shall sit upon the ground. A total, devastating collapse.
As we finish up today, I want to leave you to reflect on this really important question. Are we building our own societal and personal foundations on solid ground, or are we facing our own collapse? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.